Well, hello, and welcome to this little bit that I'm doing on behalf of your teachers and you. I was asked one time, not too long back, how I came up with the ideas for stories, and moreover, as I go about putting that story into words, how do I do that, or how do I go about turning it into a document or even into spoken words for a speech or a presentation? Those questions may seem complicated at first, but if you just realize that everyone has talent, everyone has an imagination, everyone is capable of putting things together if they just do not ignore those talents and they don't ignore their imagination. That's the most important thing, I think. Whether you're telling a joke or writing a 400-page novel, there has to be a basis upon which you create this work. Each and every one of you exists in an environment of some sort, even if it's a very simple, confined area. And everything in that environment is a potential story or something that you can write about or talk about. A good exercise is to sit in a swivel chair or sit someplace where you can turn 360 degrees. And then turn slowly and look around and see what you see. You'll find that there's a multitude of things just surrounding your little area. For example, if I turn around in my chair in my office, I see, first of all, that it's a mess. And then I see more than that. I see a filing cabinet. I see a small cabinet with little white knobs on it, glass knobs. I see some pictures. Is there a story there? You bet there is. Probably more than one. Take, for instance, that small cabinet I mentioned with the little glass knobs. As soon as I look at that, it stirs up some memories. Those knobs came off of some cabinets that were destroyed years ago in a house that was torn down not long after that. That house belonged to a very good friend of mine. We like to go fishing. So, oh gosh, there I go, I'm starting a story. Allow me to tell you about one of my favorite stories and how it developed. When my father died, I inherited a .22 revolver. It was not some historic relic, and it didn't have a lot of value for that matter. But how he came to own it was the story. You see, my dad for years was a heavy smoker. And my mother did most of the grocery shopping. And almost every trip she made to the grocery store, she had to buy my dad a carton of cigarettes. Well, when he quit smoking, Mom would go to the grocery store and she would ask when she was checking out how much cigarettes were. And then she would take that exact amount and walk across the street to our small town bank, where she'd opened up a savings account and put the exact amount of a carton of cigarettes into that savings account each time she went to the grocery store. It wasn't much, but over time it added up. Then one day, Dad expressed interest in a .22 revolver that was on sale at a local or a nearby discount house. He said, well, I kind of like to have that. I don't have a handgun anymore, but I know I can't afford it. And Mom thought about it for a minute. She hadn't said anything to Dad about that savings account. But that day she told him, well, I've been putting money aside since you quit smoking, and there's probably enough there to buy that gun if you'd like to buy it. My dad traveled some 40 miles to that discount store the next day and bought the gun. Now, what makes that story good is that I took it one step further. In fact, I created an entire chapter for one of my books out of it. I included a lot more background information that led up to the story. And I called that story My Father's Smoking Gun. Just a little referral to where it came from. Now, that story was factual. But let's talk a little bit about fiction. I could have used that same basis and turned it into a fictional thing, whereby maybe a crazy mountain lion was attacking a small girl deep in the woods, and the hero comes up with this little .22 revolver and shoots the mountain lion, and it falls dead at the little girl's feet, and she's forever in his debt. Or I could have turned that revolver into a historic relic that was passed down from some figure in history. Now, the thing about fiction is it's all comes out of your imagination. It pours in there if you just let it happen. Just let your imagination flow. I don't care who you might choose as being a great author, but I can guarantee you that it was something that happened to them or around them that made them think of what made them great. Edgar Allan Poe likely saw this big black raven somewhere in his environment, in a tree, on a fence post, in a yard. And it inspired him to write one of the greatest poems he ever wrote, The Raven. J.K. Rowling says that she came up with the idea for the Harry Potter series while she was riding a delayed train from Manchester, England to London, England. She turned that limited experience into what was it, a 7-year-long journey through imagined people and places and things. She created battles between good and evil and fairy tales and all these things that came from her imagination as a result of riding on that train. Now, let's look at factual stories. I ran a newspaper for a while. And one of the things that I had big problems with my writers was keeping factual stories factual and not putting their opinions into it. You'll see this happen time and time again in today's world. But those opinions don't belong in a story for a reporter. A reporter should report. The opinions belong on the editorial page. If you're going to write a biography, make sure that your facts are all together. Make sure that you are accurately depicting the person that you're writing about. Whether it be a simple obituary, if they can be simple, or a 400-page biography. Take copious notes, ask lots of questions, and make sure that you have your facts right. Now, the other genre that I really want to talk to you about today is historical fiction. That's kind of my thing. I really love history, and I love to write, and I love to tell stories. Excuse me. But historical fiction can be one of those things that can excite you and get you started, because what you do is you take factual base and then put some more to it. In my book, For Where You Go, I Will Go, is a story about my family, my ancestors. But I found out when I was researching the information that it would be so much more interesting if I could sit down at a table and have a conversation with one of those ancestors. So I took the factual basis of a person. In my imagination, I put them at a kitchen table, and I created a conversation between them and someone else, and I imagined that I was listening in on it, and thereby creating that story. And it becomes so self-satisfying if you can just let your imagination expand. Just think about those little things that you see when you turn around in a circle, and then let them grow into a story. That's how I create and write a story. Now, for today, what I'm supposed to do is come up with something to bring your creativeness out, to stimulate your imagination, to explore your talents. So, here's what we're going to do. We're going to split up into pairs, and I'm going to try to separate them as much as possible that we can do here. And I have a couple of assignments for you. Back here on this table, you'll notice that there's several things scattered on the table. I want you each to pick one of those things. And then I want you to sit and look at it for a minute or two and write a little short story. Let's keep it down under 100 words, let's say. A little short story about that. It can be fictional, it can be factual. I don't care. Just let it work. And then after the break, we're going to take these pairs that I will select here in a few minutes, and I want you to sit with each other, and I want you to interview each other. Just not too long, but get in as much depth as possible in a few minutes. Then you're going to sit back over here at your stations, and you're going to write a short biography on that person, and it must be factual. And then we're going to discuss some of it and have a little fun exploring our imagination. So let's get busy and have some fun.